My name is Olivia Carter, and this is my story. I live in Miami, America, and 2 months ago, I signed for a little white house with a blue door and a lemon tree by the steps. I used a wire transfer for the down payment and felt the weight of it in my hands even though money has no weight. I told myself the house would be a fresh start, a place where I could speak the truth and not flinch. To celebrate, I booked a villa by the bay for a housewarming party. I paid $4,000 in advance with my card. The invoice came stamped in tidy letters by a planner named James, and it promised string lights, a quartet, and trays of shrimp and small cakes. I sent the plan to my best friend, Laura, and she replied with a string of hearts. I kept reading the total, $4,000, like it was a magic phrase that could hold my new life together. On the day of the party, the sky over Miami was a flat, gentle blue. I wore a simple white dress and a thin gold chain, and I drove a rented silver car along the water. As I turned into the villa's drive, I saw the palms bend in the wind like they were pointing the way. I thought of all the rooms in my new house, the narrow kitchen, the small sunroom where light fell like clean paper, the spare bedroom I called the brave room because I planned to sleep there when nights felt hard. I parked, took a breath, and walked toward the open doors. Inside, the air smelled like white roses and sugar. A string quartet was playing a soft song I did not know. People were moving around, smiling, holding drinks. For a second I thought they were early. Then I looked up at the welcome sign. It did not say my name. It said, in big cursive letters, Evelyn and Mark forever. Evelyn is my sister. Mark is my husband. The floor did something strange under my feet, like a boat hit by a small wave. I blinked, and the room stayed the same. Everywhere I looked, I saw my choices. The white roses I had picked from a lookbook. The glass lanterns I had chosen because they reminded me of quiet streets in Europe. The tiny seashells on the cake that I had asked for because I love the beach at night. The same plan, the same details. Only now the names were not mine. James, the planner, hurried over with a careful smile. Olivia, he said, like he had to reach for my name. There was a change. I meant to call. A change. I heard my voice from far away. I paid $4,000. This is my party. Across the room, Evelyn stood under a drape of lights. Her dress was silk and simple. Mark stood beside her in a blue suit. He touched her arm the way you touch glass. When they saw me, they froze. I watched their faces shift, like clouds moving over the sun. I felt the shape of my mistake press against me, a shape I knew too well. Months before, I had broken my own family with a choice I made in secret, and the secret had burned the house we lived in. Mark had slammed a wall and then a frame, and then, in a blind, bad moment, he had hit me. He went to prison for assault. I stayed in our old condo and tried to be smaller than my shame. I told no one the whole story. Now the story had found me in this bright room. Liv, Evelyn said, stepping forward. Please, let's keep it calm. Her voice was soft, almost kind, and that somehow made it worse. I set my bag on a table and felt the gold chain bite my neck. I could taste the salt of fear, and I could taste anger, too. My new house with the blue door, the brave room, the lemon tree, everything I had hoped for, seemed to tilt. I thought of the money again. $4,000. My dollars. The servers carried trays past me, shrimp, small cakes, glasses with sugar rims, and I could not tell if I wanted to laugh or scream. This was my night, I said. My house. My party. My $4,000. No one answered. The quartet played on, like the song had to keep the world steady. I stood very still in the middle of the room that used to be mine. I wish I could say the mess began at the villa, but the truth started months earlier in my old condo above Biscayne Boulevard. I was lonely in rooms that once felt bright. Mark worked late, and when he came home, his eyes slid past me like I was a chair he meant to move someday. We had small fights about big things, trust, money, what a promise means, and big fights about small things, the dishes, the thermostat, a forgotten birthday card. I told myself all couples stumble. That time would make us kind again. Instead, time made me hard, and I made a choice that cracked the floor under us. I reached for my sister, Evelyn, because she knew my map from childhood, because she laughed at my bad jokes, because she made a hard day feel less sharp. I told myself it was only a late talk, only a drink, only a secret. Secrets grow like roots in wet soil. They do not stay small. When Mark learned the truth, he did not shout at first. He sat at the edge of our bed and asked, "Why?" I gave him a sentence that tasted like dust. I felt invisible. He pressed his hand over his mouth, like he was holding in a storm. He stood, took 2 steps, and drove his fist into the wall by the closet, then into the frame with our wedding photo, and then fast and awful, into my shoulder as I tried to stop him. The crack of it still lives in my body. I did not fall, but I bent in 2. We both started to cry. The neighbors called the police. I watched red and blue light wash over the white curtains, and I knew a line had been crossed that money could not mend. The officers took statements. They looked at my shoulder and at the broken frame. They looked at Mark's shaking hands. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I did not feel like I had done anything brave. I just told the truth. He was charged with assault and taken away. The condo grew very quiet after that. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of weak coffee and a bill for $327 that I paid in dollars and a grief I could not count. I tried to call Evelyn to say I was sorry for folding her into my bad choice, but the call rang out. When she did answer 2 days later, her voice was careful, and mine was too. We said we needed space. Space is not a soft thing. It is a cold room where every sound echoes. A month later, Mark wrote me a letter from prison. He asked for forgiveness and said he would spend his life earning it, but he never sent the letter. I learned later he wrote to Evelyn instead, and to me only in his head. He told her that love could be rebuilt if the truth stood guard. He told her he had seen a chapel in a book about Europe with a high window and wanted to stand in light like that again. She wrote back about clean mornings and coffee and redemption. I do not know when they crossed from comfort to a plan, but they did, and I was the last to understand it. While they wrote, I went looking for a new place to live, something small and mine. That is how I found the white house with the blue door, the lemon tree, the sunroom where the light falls like paper. I put down $18,000 in savings and signed my name in a neat hand. I told myself this was America's promise. You can start again if you tell the truth and pay what you owe. I made lists, paint the awful beige, replace the cracked tile, find a second-hand sofa for under $400, and I believed a clean floor could mean a clean heart. But I did not fix the deeper thing. I did not call my mother in New York and confess all of it. I did not tell Aunt Rose in Boston that I had set a match to our family. I held the secret like a hot coin and kept walking. When I booked the villa, when I sent that $4,000 deposit and picked out white roses and string lights, I thought I was paying for a new life. What I bought, without knowing, was a mirror. And when I reached the door and saw Evelyn and Mark forever, I finally faced the worst truth. I had not just broken my marriage, I had broken the ground my sister and I stood on. In that bright room, with music moving like water around me, I understood that the bill for my choices was still due, and the price would not be paid in flowers. I stood in the doorway and felt the room tilt like a slow wave. The villa smelled of white roses and sugar, and the quartet played a song that tried to smooth the air. The sign still shouted Evelyn and Mark forever. I wanted to scrape the letters off with my hands. Laura found me first. She took my elbow and said my name in a way that meant breathe. I told her I had paid $4,000 for this night and could show the receipt. She nodded and said, "We will fix it." But her eyes slid to the stage where my sister stood in silk and my husband stood in blue. I saw the cake I chose, the glass lanterns I ordered, the long table with linen I picked because it reminded me of quiet cafes in Europe. My choices had dressed the room, and now the room bowed to them, not me. James, the planner, came with his careful smile and a folder that clicked open like a tiny door. "Olivia," he said, almost gentle. There was a change of... I did not let him finish. A change of what? I asked. Of owner? Of truth. I told him I had paid the deposit in dollars and the balance was due tonight. He said he could explain the fees, and that some charges might be returned, maybe $1,200 after the switch. The number felt like a small stone in a deep pond. I thought of the lemon tree by my new blue door, how I had dreamed of serving fresh water with slices and calling it a new start. Now I stood in a party that wore my name in secret, and I felt poor even with money in my bag. Evelyn walked toward me, and the room hushed. She looked like a bride in a magazine, simple and bright. "Liv," she said, soft. "Please don't make a scene. We will talk. Not here." I stared at her and saw the girl who once split a candy bar with me on a cold night in America, who kept my secrets in middle school, who held my hand when our father left. I also saw the woman who took my husband's letters and made plans in rooms I did not enter. "You took my night," I said. "You took my money. You took what was left." She flinched, but kept her chin level. Mark was behind her now, close enough to hear. He said, "You owed me an ending." I felt the chain at my neck bite my skin. "I owed you truth, and I failed," I said. "But I did not owe you this." I stepped onto the stage because the microphone was there, and because I wanted my voice to reach the corners. This was my housewarming, I told the guests who had turned to watch. I live in Miami. I bought a small house with a blue door, and I paid $4,000 for this event. They changed it without asking me. Murmurs rose. Aunt Rose from Boston stood near the back, her mouth a small O. A neighbor, Daniel, shook his head. A few strangers looked kind, a few looked hungry for drama. The servers moved with their trays, shrimp, tiny cakes, bright sugar rims, and the music tried to pour calm over everyone. Security came, 2 men in black with soft voices. One said, "Ma'am, let's step down." I said, "I will step down when someone admits what this is." Mark moved fast, maybe to take the mic, maybe to guide me away. I pulled back, my heel clipped a chair, and the stack crashed like thunder. The sound snapped the room. Laura reached for me. Evelyn reached for Mark. His hand caught my arm. I slapped it away without thinking. He shoved me back a step. It was small, but the story around us was big, and people gasped. Someone shouted to call the police. Someone else said I was drunk. I was not. I was bright awake, like a wire in a wall. The officers came in under the string lights I had picked from a catalog. They asked for names and IDs. They asked who booked the villa. I showed my email with the invoice and the charge on my card. James talked about authorized changes. Evelyn kept saying, "We can explain." Mark stood very still, jaw tight. The officers looked at my arm, at the fallen chairs, at the old record on Mark's file. In the noise, blame and truth mixed like ice in a glass. They told me I was being detained for disorderly conduct and trespass, and they told Mark he had violated terms with aggressive contact. Cuffs clicked, one pair, and then another. As we walked out, the quartet kept playing a calm song, as if music could glue the night back together. The warm Miami air hit my face. I looked up at the soft sky over America and felt the oddest thing, a quiet space open in my chest, like a door cracked to fresh air. I had lost the night, the money, and the last neat lie. But I had also lost the game of pretending. The police car door shut, and the world narrowed to my own breath. In that small space, I told myself a plain truth I could afford. The bill was mine to pay, and I would pay it in dollars, day by honest day. The cell was cold and square, like a metal lunchbox for a giant. The bench was harder than it looked. I sat with my hands folded to stop the shake. The officer with the kind eyes said I could make one call. I stared at the gray phone on the wall, as if it were a door with a number code I did not know. When I lifted the receiver, the plastic was warm from 100 other hands. I dialed Laura. She picked up on the second ring and said my name before I could speak. "I'm at the station," I said. "Bail will be around $2,500. Can you come?" My voice was even, almost calm, like I was reading a weather report for Miami, America. Heavy air, storm passing, light at the edge. "I'm already in the car," she said. "I have my card and yours. We'll get you out." Her words were steady, like a handrail on a moving train. When I hung up, the cell returned to its cold hum. A woman across from me asked if I was okay. Her name was Carla. She said she was in for shoplifting sunscreen. "It's always the small stuff," she said. We talked about nothing and everything, because that is what women do when the air needs to soften. I told her I had bought a house with a blue door and a lemon tree. She told me she had a cat named Prince who liked to sleep on clean towels. We both smiled at that. Then the door opened, and an officer called my name. At the desk, a clerk read the numbers like a recipe. Bail, $2,500. Processing fee, $85. Release time, not long if my ride paid fast. My hands wanted to count, to sort the dollars into stacks I could see. Rent, fines, food, the tiny life I was trying to build. I signed my name. I thought about the $4,000 I had paid for the party that became a wedding, about the $1,200 James said might be returned after a switch fee, about the $900 I might owe a lawyer for one clean hour in court. Money is a language. Tonight it said, pay and move on. Laura arrived with her hair in a messy knot and a face like a lighthouse. She paid, she hugged me, and she did not ask for the story because she already knew it. Outside, the night felt wide again. Miami's air touched my skin like warm water. We drove in silence past the dark bay and the tall glass towers. I stared at the city lights and saw my life like a map with new roads drawn in pencil. At my little house, the lemon tree was black against the porch light. I stood on the step and made a list out loud because lists are how I keep fear from swelling. Call a lawyer, call the villa, demand the refund, change the locks, sell the house if I must, pay fines in dollars, sleep, drink water, breathe, start again. Laura wrote the list on her phone and said, "I'll hold it with you." The next morning, I woke before the sun and made coffee in my narrow kitchen. The cup was chipped, but the coffee was hot, and that was enough. I called James at 8. He sounded tired and careful. He said he could process the partial refund by Friday in the amount of $1,200 minus setup costs and emergency change labor. I said, in a calm voice I borrowed from someone wiser, that I expected more. He offered an extra $300 as a gesture. I took it because I needed dollars, not pride. Then I called a lawyer named Simone in downtown Miami. She charged $900 for first pass and told me my case was small but clear. "You will be fine," she said. "Fine costs something. Pay it and keep walking." That afternoon, I drove to the ocean and sat on the low wall by the sand. I thought of New York and Boston, where my mother and Aunt Rose lived, and of Denver and Chicago, where I might someday rent a studio with bright windows. I thought of Europe, of quiet squares and morning light, and felt no pull to run there. My life was in America, in this plain, imperfect city where I had broken my own heart and would mend it piece by piece. I sent a text to my mother, "I'm sorry. I will call tonight." I sent one to Aunt Rose. "Can I visit next month?" No drama, just tea. When the sun lowered, I went home, opened every window, and let the house breathe. I took the blue door off its squeaky hinge and rubbed the metal with oil until it swung clean. It felt like a small trick of grace, a door that opened without complaint. I sat on the floor and wrote numbers on a yellow pad. Bail $2,500, fees $85, lawyer $900, refund $1,500, until the math showed me a path. It was not pretty, but it was mine. I would work, pay, and tell the truth. I would sell the things that carried the old life's dust. I would keep the lemon tree. That night, before I slept, I stood in the brave room and said out loud what I believed now. I ruined my perfect picture, and then I faced it. I called for help from a real friend. I counted my dollars. I chose a clean day over a glittering lie. Tomorrow would be quiet work. That sounded like freedom to me.